I never imagined I would ever find myself writing something like this, but I guess life has a way of throwing you into situations you never thought you would face. My name doesn't matter, and honestly, even if it did, I wouldn't want it attached to this story. What matters is the truth of what happened and how it changed the course of my life in ways I still struggle to process. For years, I believed I had a solid marriage, the kind people looked at and thought, they've got it all figured out. I used to believe that too. My wife and I had been together for almost a decade. We met in college, bonded over cheap coffee and late-night study sessions, and slowly built a life together that felt safe and steady. We had a small apartment at first, then moved into a modest home after a few years of saving. Our wedding wasn't extravagant, but it was perfect to us, surrounded by family and friends, full of laughter, full of promises. I held her hands at the altar and thought, this is it. This is the person I will grow old with. And for a long time that belief gave me a sense of peace. We weren't perfect, of course. Nobody is. But we had our rituals, the little things that built the glue of our marriage. Sunday mornings meant coffee together on the porch. Every Friday night we made dinner at home and watched a movie, even if we were both exhausted. We had traditions that reminded me of our roots. Inside jokes, certain songs we claimed as ours, even dumb little habits like fighting over who got the last slice of pizza. To me, these were the signs of love. They felt like proof that what we had was strong, that we were building something worth holding on to. But over time, I started to notice small shifts in her behavior. At first, they were almost invisible, the kinds of things you brush off because you don't want to sound paranoid or insecure. She started guarding her phone a little more tightly, turning the screen away when a notification popped up. She stayed later at work, claiming deadlines or team projects needed her attention. When I suggested dinner dates or spontaneous outings like we used to enjoy, she'd often sigh and say she was too tired. I rationalized it all. Work stress, maybe hormonal moods, or just the natural drift that can happen when people get busy. I told myself that marriages go through phases and this was just one of them. Yet deep down something in me felt uneasy. It wasn't a scream or even a loud whisper. It was more like a faint alarm in the background. Still, I ignored it. I trusted her. I wanted to believe in the woman I had loved for years, the woman I had built a life with. I convinced myself that questioning her would be disrespectful, that the strength of our bond was proven in the way I gave her freedom without suspicion. Then came the offhand comments from others, which were easy enough to dismiss at first. A coworker of mine once mentioned he thought he saw her at a cafe with someone, but I brushed it off. Probably a colleague, I said. Another time, a mutual friend asked me casually if my wife had started a new hobby because they'd seen her in a part of town she normally didn't visit. I laughed it off, saying maybe she was shopping or running errands. Every time I gave her the benefit of the doubt. Looking back, I realize how much I wanted to protect the image of my marriage rather than confront the possibility of cracks in it. Still, I couldn't shake the growing distance between us. Her touch became less frequent. Conversations felt shorter, as though she was present physically but her mind was elsewhere. I'd ask her how her day went, and she'd answer with vague phrases. Fine, or busy. I tried to initiate intimacy, but sometimes she would pull away gently, saying she wasn't in the mood. I told myself it was stress, or maybe even that I needed to do more to make her feel appreciated. I tried cooking more meals, leaving her notes, planning small surprises. Each time, she smiled and thanked me, but something in her eyes seemed absent, as if the warmth I once knew had been replaced by a distant politeness. The real turning point came when I decided to surprise her after one of her supposed late nights at work. I had stopped at a florist on the way home, picking out her favorite flowers, white lilies, and planned to make her favorite pasta dish. I pictured the look on her face when she walked through the door, tired from work, only to see the table set, the candles lit, and me standing there with flowers in hand. I wanted to rekindle something, remind us both of who we had been and why we had chosen each other. That night, I texted her around 6, asking when she might be home. She replied quickly, saying she had another long evening ahead and not to wait up for dinner. A part of me felt a little crushed, but another part thought, perfect. I'll surprise her when she least expects it. I set everything up and waited, watching the clock. But as the minutes stretched into hours and the food grew cold, unease started to creep in again. I called her phone, but it went to voicemail. I sent a message, but no reply. Around 9 o'clock, I couldn't take the uncertainty anymore. I got in the car, flowers still sitting on the passenger seat, and decided to drive to her office. The plan was innocent enough in my mind. Show up, see her smile, take her home, and maybe talk about how distant we had become. I thought this could be the spark we needed. But as I turned into the parking lot, I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. Her car wasn't there. First, I panicked, thinking maybe something had happened. But when I checked the building, it was completely dark, clearly closed hours ago. Confusion swirled in my head. Where was she? Why lie about being at work? My mind scrambled for reasonable explanations. Maybe she had gone to a friend's. Maybe she forgot to tell me about a change in plans. Still, the unease that had been quietly building for months suddenly roared in my chest. I decided to drive around for a while, not really knowing what I was looking for, only that I needed answers. And that's when I saw something that stopped me in my tracks. A car I recognized, hers, was parked in front of a house I had never been to before. My heart raced, my palms sweaty on the steering wheel. The flowers lay limp beside me, forgotten. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at that house, trying to summon the courage to get out of the car, to knock on the door, to find out the truth I was already terrified to know. That moment was the beginning of the end, though I didn't realize it yet. All I knew was that something inside me was about to break wide open, and nothing would ever be the same. When I finally stepped out of the car and walked toward that house, my heart felt like it was pounding so loudly that anyone nearby could hear it. Each step I took was heavier than the last, as though my body already knew the truth my mind was still desperately trying to deny. I had never been there before, never had a reason to. Yet seeing her car parked outside made the reality undeniable. She was inside. And if she wasn't at work like she had claimed, then what reason did she have to be here? I approached the front door, my hands trembling, the flowers still in the car behind me, forgotten. I wanted to turn back. I wanted to tell myself that maybe she was visiting someone I didn't know. Maybe she had a friend or colleague she hadn't mentioned. But the pit in my stomach told me otherwise. There was a heaviness in the air that made me feel sick. I hesitated, debating whether to knock, to call, to leave. Curiosity battled fear, and fear lost. When the door wasn't locked, I pushed it open slowly, and the world I knew shattered in a single instant. There she was. My wife, the woman I had loved, the woman I had trusted, lying on a couch with her legs draped over another man. Their closeness left nothing to the imagination. It wasn't ambiguous. It wasn't innocent. It was betrayal in its rawest form, staring me in the face. The image burned itself into my mind, and I knew even then that it would never leave me. Time seemed to freeze. I didn't shout at first, I didn't storm across the room. I just stood there, my chest tightening as though I couldn't breathe. My vision blurred, not because I couldn't see, but because my brain refused to process what my eyes were showing me. My heart hammered so hard that I felt lightheaded. It was like I had left my own body and was watching the scene unfold from somewhere else. She saw me then, her eyes going wide with horror. She pulled away from him quickly, fumbling for words that never came. The man scrambled, muttered something under his breath, and bolted toward the door like a coward. He didn't even look at me. He just disappeared, leaving silence and wreckage behind. And there we were, just the two of us. My wife, who had promised me loyalty, who had vowed to love me for the rest of her life, standing in front of me half-covered, tears welling in her eyes, her mouth opening and closing as though she could explain the unexplainable. I wanted to scream. I wanted to destroy everything in that room. But all I could do was stand there, my voice cracking when I finally asked, "Why?" She shook her head, crying now, reaching out toward me as if a touch could undo what she had done. "It's not what you think," she whispered, the most insulting words I had ever heard in my life. Not what I think. I had just seen her. There was no misunderstanding, no innocent explanation. I pulled back from her reach, my hands clenched into fists, not to hit, but to hold myself together. My voice came again, sharper this time, shaking but firm. How long? That was the question that mattered now. Not why. Not excuses. How long had this deception lived inside the walls of my marriage? She broke then, sobbing, admitting it had been going on for months. Each word she spoke cut into me deeper than the last. Months of lies. Months of pretending. Months where I was the fool, working, loving, caring while she gave herself to someone else. Felt hollow. My ears rang. I wanted to leave, but my feet wouldn't move. My mind raced through every memory we had ever shared, and suddenly they all felt tainted. Every smile, every kiss, every quiet night together. It all seemed poisoned now. She tried to explain, to justify. She said she had been lonely, that she felt disconnected, that she didn't know how to talk to me. She begged me to understand that it wasn't about me, that it was about her weakness, her confusion, her need for attention. But all I heard was betrayal. All I felt was the sharp pain of knowing that I had trusted her completely, and she had thrown it all away. Her tears didn't move me. Her apologies didn't soothe me. I looked at her and realized I was staring at a stranger. The woman I thought I married no longer existed. She was gone, replaced by someone who could betray without hesitation, who could lie to my face every day while pretending everything was fine. I turned away from her then, my body trembling, my throat burning as though every breath was laced with fire. She called after me, her voice breaking, begging me not to go, swearing she would change, promising she would do anything to make it right. But there was no making it right. Some things once broken can never be repaired. As I stepped out of that house, the cool night air hit me, but it didn't bring relief. It only made the emptiness inside me more profound. I walked back to my car like a man who had lost everything, though the cruel reality was that I hadn't lost her. She had lost me. And she didn't even realize it yet. Driving away, my thoughts swirled in chaos. Anger, grief, disbelief. They all collided, leaving me in a storm I couldn't escape. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. I screamed into the empty car, a sound so raw that it didn't even feel human. The flowers on the passenger seat mocked me, once a symbol of love, now a symbol of my own naivety. I pulled over at some point, unable to keep driving, my body shaking uncontrollably. I thought about the years I had invested, the sacrifices I had made, the trust one had given so freely. I thought about the nights I stayed up working to provide, the mornings I kissed her before heading out the door, believing she was mine and I was hers. And now all of it felt meaningless, wasted on someone who never truly valued it. In that moment, sitting on the side of the road, I realized something crucial. I couldn't fix her. I couldn't fix what she had done. The only choice I had left was whether I would let this betrayal destroy me, or whether I would find a way to survive it. The pain was unbearable, but beneath it, a quiet resolve began to grow. She had broken me, yes. But maybe, just maybe, this would be the thing that forced me to rebuild stronger. I didn't know then how I would do it, or what the future would hold. All I knew was that my marriage, the life I thought I had, was over. And the man I was before that night no longer existed. The days that followed felt like I was living inside a nightmare that refused to end. I would wake up and, for a few seconds, forget what had happened. Then it would all come crashing back, and the weight of betrayal would press against my chest so hard I could barely breathe. Sleep was a stranger, food tasted like ash, and every thought I had circled back to that moment, that image I couldn't erase no matter how much I wanted to. I kept replaying it in my head like a cruel movie stuck on repeat, torturing me with every detail. I moved out almost immediately. I couldn't stand the sight of her. The house that once felt like our sanctuary now felt contaminated, poisoned by lies and deceit. I packed a few bags and went to stay with a close friend who didn't ask questions at first, just gave me space. Later, when I finally told him what had happened, he listened without judgment, his silence more comforting than any words could have been. Meanwhile, she flooded my phone with messages. Text after text, voicemail after voicemail, begging me to talk, swearing she was sorry, insisting it had been a mistake, that it didn't mean anything. Each message cut into me in a different way. On one hand, I wanted to believe her, to think this was some horrible lapse in judgment that could somehow be undone. On the other hand, I knew the truth. It hadn't been a one-time mistake. She had admitted it had been going on for months. That wasn't an accident. That was a choice, repeated over and over, each time with the full knowledge that she was betraying me. Her words meant nothing to me anymore. They were hollow, the same mouth that had kissed me goodnight now spitting out excuses I couldn't bear to hear. I blocked her number for a while, but then unblocked it again because part of me wanted to see her grovel. It was pathetic, but in my pain, I clung to the small satisfaction of knowing she was desperate, that she was losing me. Still, no amount of begging could erase the image burned into my mind or restore the trust that had been obliterated. The worst part wasn't even the act itself. It was the lies. The countless times she had looked me in the eye and told me she loved me. The morning she left for work, with a kiss on her lips. The night she said she was tired when she had already given herself to someone else. That duplicity destroyed me. Made me question everything. Was any of it real? Did she ever actually love me? Or was I just a placeholder until something more exciting came along? I spiraled. I doubted myself in ways I never had before. I stood in front of mirrors and wondered if I wasn't attractive enough, not successful enough, not interesting enough. I picked apart my flaws as though if I could identify the one thing wrong with me, it would explain why she had done what she did. But no matter how much I tore myself apart, the truth remained. Her betrayal wasn't about me not being enough. It was about her not being loyal. I confided in my family eventually, and the reactions were mixed. My mother told me forgiveness was possible, that marriages could survive infidelity if both people worked hard enough. My father, on the other hand, told me to walk away immediately, that a foundation cracked that badly could never hold weight again. Friends gave their own opinions, some telling me I'd regret leaving too quickly, others saying I'd regret staying even more. Everyone had advice, but none of it made the decision easier. She asked to meet in person after a week of silence, and against my better judgment, I agreed. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted closure, maybe I wanted to see her suffer. When I sat across from her, I saw a woman I no longer recognized. Her eyes were swollen from crying. Her voice cracked as she begged me not to throw away what we had. She said she was willing to go to therapy, willing to cut all ties with him, willing to do whatever it took to make things right. But as I listened, I felt nothing. Not anger, not love, not pity. Just emptiness. She asked me if I could ever forgive her, and I told her the truth. Even if I wanted to, I didn't think I was capable of it. The trust was gone, and without trust, love cannot survive. She wept, telling me she had made a terrible mistake, that she didn't want to lose me, but I sat there, numb, wondering how many times she had said the same words to him after leaving me at home. After that meeting, I knew with certainty that I couldn't go back. The idea of sharing a bed with her again, of pretending things could ever be normal, made me sick. I realized that staying with her would mean living in constant suspicion, wondering if every late night was a lie, if every smile she gave was directed at someone else. That wasn't a life, it was a prison. So I began to focus on myself. It wasn't easy. The nights were long and lonely, filled with intrusive thoughts and waves of sadness that hit me out of nowhere. But slowly, I began to take small steps toward healing. I went for long runs not because I enjoyed them, but because I needed an outlet for the storm inside me. I started journaling, pouring my anger and confusion onto pages I never intended anyone else to read. I even began therapy, something I had never considered before, and though it was uncomfortable at first, it gave me a place to unravel the mess inside me. As weeks turned into months, the rawness of the pain dulled slightly. It didn't vanish, but it became more manageable, less suffocating. I started to see glimpses of myself again, the version of me that had existed before betrayal consumed me. I laughed at a joke one day and realized it was the first genuine laugh I'd had in months. I sat with friends and noticed that I wasn't thinking about her every second. Healing was slow, uneven, but it was happening. Meanwhile, she continued to reach out, even when I made it clear I wanted nothing to do with her. She wrote letters, sent emails, left voicemails, all filled with promises of change, all dripping with regret. Maybe she was sincere, maybe she wasn't. I didn't care anymore. I had learned a painful but necessary lesson. Regret doesn't undo actions, apologies don't erase betrayal, and sometimes love isn't enough to fix what's been broken. The turning point for me came when I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't consumed by thoughts of revenge, or obsessed with replaying what had happened. Instead, I felt a quiet acceptance. She had done what she had done, and I couldn't control it. What I could control was how I responded, how I chose to move forward. And I chose not to let her betrayal define me forever. That was when I knew I was ready to let go completely. Divorce wasn't just a legal process. It was liberation, a chance to reclaim my life and rebuild it without the shadow of her lies hanging over me. When the divorce papers were finally signed, I felt an odd mix of grief and relief wash over me. Grief for the life I thought I had, the future I once believed was secure, and relief that I no longer had to live in limbo, torn between pain and false hope. It was a strange moment, like closing the cover of a book I never wanted to read but had been forced to finish. As I walked away from that chapter, I didn't feel victorious or triumphant. I simply felt free, and that freedom, fragile as it was, became the foundation on which I would rebuild myself. In the weeks after, I threw myself into rediscovering who I was without her. For so long, my identity had been wrapped up in being her husband, in being one half of what I thought was a partnership. Stripped of that role, I felt exposed, almost like a stranger to myself. So I started small. I picked up hobbies I had abandoned years ago because she hadn't shared interest in them. I began reading again, devouring books I had put off for lack of time. I cooked meals for myself not out of obligation but because I wanted to experiment with flavors, to create something that was mine. There were lonely days, plenty of them. I won't pretend that moving on was a straight line. Some mornings I woke up still aching, still haunted by the betrayal, still tempted to scroll through old photos and remember the good times. But each time I resisted, each time I chose to focus on the present rather than the past, I grew a little stronger. Healing didn't happen overnight, but it did happen, one decision at a time. I started to notice the little victories. The first night I slept through without waking in a panic. The first time I passed a place we used to visit and didn't feel like breaking down. The first genuine smile that came without effort. These moments didn't erase the pain, but they showed me that it was possible to move forward, that there was life beyond betrayal. Therapy played a big role in my recovery. Sitting across from someone who listened without judgment, who guided me through the mess of emotions, gave me tools I hadn't realized I needed. I learned that what happened wasn't my fault, that her choices reflected her character, not my worth. I learned that it was okay to grieve the loss of someone who was still alive, to mourn the version of her I thought I knew. Most importantly, I learned that I deserved better, that I deserved honesty, loyalty, and love without conditions. As the months passed, I started to hear rumors about her. I didn't go looking for them, but people talk, and word reached me that the man she had risked everything for had betrayed her too. He had left her, moving on without a second thought. When I first heard it, I felt a flicker of satisfaction, the bitter kind that comes from seeing justice served. But that feeling faded quickly, replaced by something else, indifference. Her downfall wasn't my victory. Her misery wasn't my responsibility. I realized then just how far I had come, because instead of obsessing over her life, I was focused on my own. One of the biggest changes was learning how to enjoy solitude. Before, I had been so dependent on her presence, so used to building my days around us, that being alone felt unnatural. But over time, solitude became my strength. I discovered peace in quiet evenings, contentment in small routines, pride in the independence I had regained. I stopped seeing myself as half of something and began seeing myself as whole. It wasn't long before people started asking if I was ready to date again. Some encouraged me to get back out there quickly, as if replacing her would erase the hurt. Others warned me to take my time, to heal before letting someone new in. I listened politely but made my own decision. I wasn't looking for someone else to fill the void. I wanted to fill it myself first. That choice was liberating. I didn't need a rebound or a distraction. I needed to prove to myself that I could be complete on my own. Eventually, though, life has a way of surprising you. I met someone unexpectedly. Not through apps or setups. Just a natural encounter that blossomed into a connection. I was cautious at first, hesitant to trust, wary of history repeating itself. But she was different. She valued honesty above all else, and slowly, carefully, she showed me that love could exist without lies. It wasn't about sweeping gestures or grand promises. It was about small consistencies, the kind that build real trust. Still, I didn't rush. I took my time, moving forward at a pace that felt safe. Whether this relationship will last forever, I don't know, and honestly, I don't need to. What matters is that it has shown me I am capable of loving again without losing myself. I no longer cling to the idea of permanence, but instead focus on presence. Being fully there, fully honest, fully open. Looking back now, I don't see my ex-wife as the center of my story anymore. She is a chapter, one that taught me painful but necessary lessons. She taught me that love without loyalty is worthless. She taught me that blind trust can be dangerous, and that it's okay to demand respect. Most of all, she taught me that even the deepest betrayal doesn't have to define the rest of your life. If there's one thing I've taken from all of this, it's that pain can be transformative. At the time, it felt like the end of everything, but in reality, it was the beginning of a new version of myself. A stronger version. A wiser version. Someone who understands that self-respect isn't optional. It's essential. Someone who knows that walking away from what hurts you isn't weakness. It's strength. I don't hate her anymore. Hate requires energy, and I'm no longer willing to give her that. I don't love her either, at least not in the way I once did. What I feel now is a strange kind of neutrality, a distant acknowledgement that she was once a part of my life but no longer holds power over me. She made her choices and I made mine. The difference is that mine set me free. The future is uncertain, but it no longer scares me. I've learned that I can survive the worst and still find reasons to smile again. I've learned that heartbreak doesn't have to harden you. It can open you up to a deeper understanding of yourself and others. I've learned that sometimes losing someone you thought you couldn't live without is the only way to discover that you can. And so, while that night destroyed the life I thought I had, it also cleared the way for a new one. Better one. A life where I am no longer defined by betrayal, but by resilience. Where I no longer measure my worth by someone else's choices, but by the way I rise after being broken. I thought her betrayal had ended me. Instead, it became the moment that changed everything.